Do I believe in aliens?
Rolling.
The anger that propelled me in the beginning wasn't anger, it was hunger. You know, we were fucking starving to death, and we were having to live with fat chicks to feed ourselves, you know, and the reason that you live with fat chicks is because they eat, you know, and it's a safe bet when you know, you're starving, and as a musician, you want to become successful, you need to find a rich girlfriend, and you need to figure out how you're going to feed yourself. Now, we were selling drugs at the time, so we weren't really worried about getting them equipment, so the rich girlfriend part wasn't part of the equation anymore. It was just the fat girlfriend part.
My relationship with Dave Mustaine has been one where it started out, I guess, probably the reason we've stayed together all these years in the same band is because I think we knew right up front that it was based on music and the band first. And we've developed friendship and other relationships out of that, but it was always about the music, and it was always about Megadeth #1.
As with any kind of relationship, there's going to be, you know, good days and bad days, and I think that Dave's kind of, you know, sometimes, you know, he's the glue that holds us together. A lot of times he's like the fly in the ointment, and obviously there's been a lot of crap that he's had to endure, you know, with my personal behavior and the stuff that I like to do, because that's what makes me who I am. But our relationship musically is that he's a solid bass player. He's been somebody who's been drastically overlooked as far as his talent's concerned.
Coming from the Midwest, all I ever heard about were clubs like the Starwood, the Roxy, and all these world-famous rock and roll clubs. And I just thought, what do you mean we're never going to play there? And he's like, look, I've already done it. I'm not going to do it anymore. I hate it. Where we're going to go is we're going to go up to San Francisco, which is where Dave had a real big following from his Metallica days. So we would rehearse, and we put the band together in Los Angeles, and we'd drive up to San Francisco area, the Bay Area, and I remember our first time up there, I think we played 3 shows, and I mean, it was unbelievable how insane and how intense, and the moshing and the stage diving. And I remember this one show we did, we were playing, I think, Devil's Island, which is pretty much on the bass is all down in the low E string, which is the biggest, thickest string on the bass. And this kid was just getting into it so much, he reaches up, grabs the E string, and snaps it right off the bass. I'm like, now what do I do? You know, so I had to like try to change basses. And I mean, that to me summed up the San Francisco area.
I remember Gar picked my guitar up. He'd thrown a drumstick at me because we were having an argument on stage, and it hit my guitar strap, and it stuck in my guitar strap, so I looked like a guy from F Troop with an arrow sticking out of my back. I took the drumstick out, and I stuck my guitar through the drum skin, and he picked it up and held it by its fins and went, and the headstock broke off. And it was the first Jackson I'd ever had bought for me. And it was made custom for me. It was like the #1 one that they ever made. I saw red, and I went back in the dressing room and broke a tequila bottle, and they had to lock me in the dressing room by putting Anvil flight cases in front of the door so it wouldn't open, because I was going to kill him. I was going to gut him like a fucking catfish.
Over the years, Megadeth has had a lot of lineup changes, and they weren't intentional, believe me. No one hates lineup changes worse than me. In fact, every time we've had to make one, I'm usually the one that balks at it, not only because it's such a pain in the ass to break in new musicians, but you're always gambling on whether the new person that's going to come in is going to be as good or better than the person that you're replacing. And also, you know, we're very sensitive to our audience, and we know that our audience really attracts themselves to the 4 people in the band. And fortunately, it's worked out good that we've been able, I think, to keep most of those fans and still keep moving and also bring in new ones, and especially more recently with Jimmy DeGrasso and with Al Petrelli coming in the band.
Jimmy came by way of us seeing him playing with Alice Cooper. We were down in South America doing the Monsters of Rock thing, and he was with Alice, and we had played in one of the cities down there.
He's toured with other bands, Suicidal Tendencies, Alice Cooper. He actually did a little side project with Dave called MD45, where he played drums on that back in '95.
Jimmy was drumming for Alice, and I had said, you know what, we're having problems with Nick Menza, and I really like what you're doing drumming-wise. I'd like to do my side project with you, because, you know, I was thinking about, you know, using Nick, but we just were butting heads all the time. And then after we did the side project, Jimmy and I just kept in touch, and I told him that, you know, the clock was ticking until Nick, you know, basically fired himself.
And I did the side project with Dave. He asked me, hey, I'm going to do a record, do you want to play on it? And I said, yeah, sure, and which turned out to be this thing called MD45. And it just kept going and going from there, and somewhere along the way, Dave called and goes, hey, I think we're gonna need we're gonna need to make a personnel change. We're gonna need a new drummer for Megadeth. Would you be interested? And I said, sure.
Dave actually called Jimmy. He was just finishing up a European tour with Alice Cooper, and he said, are you ready? And he said, okay. So he went, I guess he had a runner go out and buy all the Megadeth CDs, which probably the Alice Cooper people were real thrilled about that. But so he basically sat up all night, a couple of nights, with pots of coffee, listening to all the Megadeth songs that we were going to play in the set. He flew back to America, and our audition with Jimmy was live on stage in front of 5,000 people at an outdoor show in Fresno.
Al Pitrelli came by way of Jimmy DeGrasso recommending him. We had found out that Marty was going to be leaving the band, and I mean, it's like you knew something was going on because he left mentally long before he left physically. And when it came down to it, and I confronted Marty, he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna go." And I said, "Okay, so let's just move on." And he did the noble thing and showed Al, you know, some of the parts he was playing.
Jimmy had known Al; they'd been friends for years, and some events came to pass on the Risk tour when Marty Friedman one day just said, he goes, I don't want to make a record like what we wanted to do with The World Needs a Hero. Because we sat up one night after a show and we were talking about it, we were like, you know, our next record's got to be heavy. It's got to be slamming. We got to get back to playing riffs. It can't just be about the short 3-minute radio pop song. You know, we got good at that, we can do that, but this one's got to be all about, we got to listen to what our fans are asking us to do, and they want to hear solos, double bass drumming, intricate bass playing, and they want to hear rude lyrics again.
Marty showed up, and Marty had some kind of a nervous breakdown and heart attack-like symptoms and shit like that, and had been taken to the emergency room, and showed up, and his wife was carrying him around like Yoko Ono and John Lennon. You know, he's walking feebly around with psychopharmaceuticals in him and shit, and says he thinks he's gonna die. And David Ellefson said, you know, what's up? What's going on? And Marty, you know, Marty and him talked, and Jimmy had some light bulb go off in his head. He called Al, and Al goes, yo, I'll be there in 2 days with the cigarette hanging out of my mouth. And he goes, we don't smoke in this band. And he goes, oh, Nicorette gum. So we were cool with that, and I thought, you know what, you are one fucking cocky bastard to think you can learn my guitar style in 2 days.
I was a fan of Megadeth from probably when the band first started. I used to teach guitar in this place on Long Island called Focus Guitar Centers. And a lot of the kids would bring in, you know, whatever was underground metal at the time for me to teach them. One of the bands being Megadeth. I was like, you know, this is pretty serious. The music's ferocious, the lyrics are cool. Over the years, I'd followed what they were up to. When Jimmy DeGrasso got in the band, I'd known Jimmy about 15 to 20 years. I'd go see them. I think I was on a bill with them down in South America a couple years ago with my previous band, Sabotage. We were opening up for them, got to see the guys hang out a little bit. You know, it was kind of cool. Always a fan of their music. Always said, you know, if I ever have my own band, we should probably model it after Megadeth.
Now, I had seen him when he played in Sabotage, and we played over them in South America. And Al's a fantastic guitar player. He's much better than I am, and he's really a musical genius because he can play a lot of stuff, but he's no Dave Mustaine on rhythm. And my guitar style is based around the rhythm, and it's the whole band is.
Al is such a high caliber musician that, I mean, within a couple weeks' time of some real good, intense work, next thing you know, Marty didn't show up to a gig one night in Vancouver, and we were 15 minutes before the show, and Dave said, Al, put your boots on, you're up.
And I hand the guitar to Al, and he went, zoom! And I just went, all right, we're in business.
You don't really bring a session style into a Megadeth record. What I bring in is my abilities to play several different kinds of stringed instruments. Some of my arrangement ideas.
Okay, my question is, did it get too notey? Should I take a where?
The World Needs a Hero album, Dave and I were still developing a relationship as two people, so I kind of tried to keep my mouth shut and didn't want to treat it like a session, although my instincts took over, where, you know, I would chart everything out, have my metronome settings, and, you know, and he'd look at me and goes, this is a heavy metal record, what are you doing? And I said, all right, well, let's try it your way. And it took a while. It's just a different way of doing the same thing.
I mean, we've never really sat down and written out a Megadeth song on a sheet of paper, but just to know the ins and outs of composition and music is really helpful. And I think now You know, over the years, every member that has come into Megadeth has brought something good to the band, and I think we're one of the luckiest bands because everybody that's come in has actually made us better. And right now, with Al Pitrelli and Jimmy DeGrasso in the band, we are by far the best that Megadeth has ever been.
The studio is great because you can really, it's a place where you can sit down, you can really hone your sound, and you can really like experiment, and you can fix things if need be, and you have a really controlled environment. Every person you ever work with in the studio has a completely different approach, but at the same time there's a lot of similarities. I think the difference with us, I think we go into the studio kind of sharing the same vision, I guess, is what we're trying to accomplish. It's, with some other people I've played with, everyone sort of went in with their own agenda, and and it doesn't always work.
Too bad there's no sound.
I like being on stage when I'm in the studio, and I love being in the studio when I'm on stage.
I like playing every night in a different town. That's really, I mean, no matter how long I do this, that's like the best part, just getting to play every night for a couple hours.
This is what it looks like if you're Dave Mustaine. Right here, the vocal. Hello, me. Meet the real me.
The only thing about, you know, a couple months on the road, you do get a little bit tired of being in a hotel room every night, you know, and you can only eat so many, you know, chicken clubs. When you're out there and you see, like, people's faces, and it's just, it makes you realize what you do this for.
Freaked out. Look at those signatures. Look. Oh my gosh. We got the Metal Gods band. Megadeth. Yeah.
Yeah! Megadeth kicks ass! Megadeth rules!
You know, I think at this point, Megadeth is a lot more about all of the years, all of the music, the fans, the band. It's the whole package.
This DVD and this live CD is basically going to be an exclamation point on a 10-month tour and a almost 2.5-year process of the band refocusing and coming back to what it does best.
I think it's going to be really good. I think this is the best time to do it. End of the tour, the band's really together. We have a long set list to like pick and choose from, and I think it's going to work out really well.
I know this much, you know, I've been around long enough now to be an elder statesman. I'm now no longer the voice of the youth of America, so I can say, fuck you, let's see if you're going to be here in 18 years, baby.